All right, grammar fans, are you ready? We're going deep today, deep into the world of common grammar mistakes. Think of it like giving your writing skills a nice little tune-up.
Exactly. We'll be looking at why these mistakes happen and, most importantly, how to avoid them, so you can really write with more confidence and clarity.
Perfect. So, to guide us on this journey, we've got two great sources. First, a really detailed article from Grammarly on the 30 most common mistakes. And then we've got a more, I guess you could say, philosophical piece from English Club, focusing on those errors that are common for folks learning English as a second language.
Yeah, it's going to be like a grammar boot camp.
I like it. Yeah. Grammar boot camp. All right, let's jump right in then. Let's start with those classic mix-ups. The ones we all struggle with. I'm talking about your versus your, affect versus affect, and of course the one that everyone seems to dread, who versus whom. The Grammarly article actually has a whole list of these.
And they're classics for a reason. They're often homophones, which means they sound the same, but the meanings are completely different.
Yeah, so our brains get tricked. Like, I know the difference, but I still find myself double-checking all the time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even I've been caught out by these sneaky homophones. I once sent an email to a colleague, and I used affect when I really meant effect. It was pretty embarrassing, let me tell you, when they pointed it out.
See, it happens to the best of us. Okay, so let's break these down one by one, make sure everyone listening can avoid these slip-ups. So what's the easiest way to remember the difference between your and your?
Well, your is possessive. It shows ownership, like your book, but your is a contraction. It's short for you are. So as in, you're going to rock this presentation.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, affect and affect, this one always trips me up.
I hear ya. A lot of people struggle with this one. I think a good mnemonic might help here. Raven. Remember, affect is a verb and affect is a noun.
Ooh, I like that. A good mnemonic that's going straight into my grammar toolkit.
Right. It's a lifesaver. So think of affect as an action. It influences something. So like the weather will affect our travel plans, and affect is the result, the noun, as in the effect of the storm was widespread power outages.
Got it. Okay, so then how about who versus whom? I feel like I should know this, but I always blank.
Don't worry. This one's less about like logic and more about the rules of grammar. Who is the subject of a sentence? The one doing the action. Think who is coming to dinner, but whom is the object of a verb or a preposition. So like, to whom should I address this letter? Or whom did you see at the store?
Okay, yeah, that's actually making it clear. So basically, paying attention to the sentence structure is key.
Exactly. It's kind of like you're solving a little grammar puzzle.
Ooh, I love that. It's like a puzzle. And this is why we love having you on the show. You make grammar fun and relatable.
Well, I think it is fun. It's all about unlocking the secrets of language.
Speaking of unlocking secrets, let's move on to another challenge. Yeah. This one comes from the English Club article, and it's all about unnecessary tense switching. It seems like this is extra tricky for people learning English as a second language.
Oh, absolutely. Tense switching, well, can make writing really confusing and hard to follow. Just imagine you're reading a story and it keeps jumping between past, present, and future tenses, right? It'd be a really bumpy ride.
I can definitely see that. So how can we avoid that? How can we stay consistent with our verb tenses? I'll admit, this is something I sometimes struggle with too.
A good place to start is to just think about the overall time frame of your writing. Are you telling a story? So past tense. Are you describing something happening now in the present? Or are you looking ahead to the future? Once you've got that primary tense, try to stick with it as much as possible.
Okay, so it's like you're setting the stage for your story and then making sure that all the actions, all the verbs kind of align with that time period.
Exactly. And of course, there are times when a tense shift is actually necessary. Maybe you're talking about something that happened in the past and then you want to connect it to like its relevance today. In those cases, you just got to make that transition really clear, so the reader doesn't get lost.
Right. So it's like you're giving those readers clear signposts, along the way so they don't get lost in a time warp in your writing. And speaking of good writing, let's not forget about proofreading. That's where you can really catch those sneaky tense slips. Or even better, use a tool like Grammarly.
Oh, tools like Grammarly, those can be lifesavers. It's like having a grammar guru on call, 24/7, ready to flag those errors we might have missed.
Totally. I rely on Grammarly all the time. Okay, let's move on to another super crucial area. This is something the English Club article mentioned. Capitalization. I know it seems simple, but using capitals correctly, it's so important, especially when we're talking about formal writing.
Absolutely. Remember that example from the English Club article about the student's visa application? The one with all the hilarious capitalization errors? It just goes to show you, how important it is to get those capitals right.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a classic. It definitely highlighted the importance of mastering capitalization.
The rules of capitalization, they can seem complex, but it's really about clarity and respecting conventions. We capitalize I, proper nouns, the first letter of a new sentence, and so on. It's like a little visual cue that helps the reader navigate the text.
So basically, don't go capital crazy unless, you're writing a really dramatic social media post.
Right, in most cases, stick to the rules. Your writing will look more polished, more credible. It shows that you really care about the details.
Right. Details matter. Okay, speaking of details, I have a confession to make. Articles, those little words, a, an, and the, they are my personal grammar nemesis.
I understand. Article usage can be tricky, especially for non-native English speakers. It's like it might not even be a concept that exists in their first language.
The English Club article talked about understanding the difference between countable and uncountable nouns. And I still get confused sometimes.
Well, it's a good rule of thumb if you can count it, right? Like a book or two books, you probably need an article. But if it's something you can't count, like water or advice, then you might not need an article at all.
I remember this one time I was traveling in France, and I tried to order a water at a cafe.
Yeah.
The waiter, he looked at me like I had three heads. Yeah, it was a total light bulb moment for me, realizing how articles don't always translate directly between languages.
Oh, yeah, totally. Those real life experiences, those are the best teachers. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn and get better.
Definitely. Mistakes are just opportunities for growth. All right, so we've covered some of the most common grammar pitfalls, but now I'm ready to level up. I want to delve into some of the less obvious but equally important ones. I'm ready for the next level of grammar.
Let's do it. We'll explore things like misplaced modifiers, passive voice, and even the difference between those often confused dashes, M dashes and N dashes. Get ready. It's about to get a little grammar geeky in here.
I'm all in. Let's unlock that next level of grammar mastery.
Okay, so misplaced modifiers. These are phrases that, well, they can make your writing unintentionally hilarious if you're not careful.
Oh, yeah. The misplaced modifiers. They're the ones that, they can make it sound like a street has a fluffy tail.
Exactly. Like, I saw a dog running down the street with a fluffy tail. So the way it's written, it sounds like the street has the tail, not the dog.
Yeah, so it's all about placement then. Making sure that modifying phrase is right next to the word that it's actually supposed to be describing.
Precisely. Keep those modifiers close, and your writing will be much, much clearer. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about passive voice. This one, it's not always a mistake, but as the Grammarly article pointed out, active voice, it's generally more direct and engaging.
Okay. Yeah, I think I get the basic idea, but can you maybe give us an example, just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Sure. So in active voice, the subject is the one performing the action.
Right.
So the chef created the dish. But in passive voice, the subject is actually acted upon. So the dish was created by the chef. You see the difference?
Yeah, okay. I see it now.
Yeah.
The active voice definitely has more, energy to it, more punch. But I don't know, isn't there ever a time when passive voice is actually a better choice? Like, what about in scientific writing?
That's a great point. You're right. Passive voice, it definitely has its uses. Sometimes you want to emphasize the action or the result, rather than who did it, the actor. So in a scientific paper, you might say, the experiment was conducted under controlled conditions.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not about, banning passive voice completely. It's more about knowing when it's the most effective choice.
Exactly. It's all about using the right tool for the job. And speaking of tools, let's talk about some punctuation tools, ones that people often get mixed up. The M dash, the N dash, and the hyphen.
Ooh, yes. Dashes. The Grammarly article had a whole section on these. I'm ready for a dash of punctuation knowledge.
Okay, well, first let's tackle the M dash. It's the longest of the three, and it's really great for creating a dramatic pause or for setting off, a parenthetical phrase like this.
Ooh, I love it. The M dash. It just adds a little flair. It's like a dramatic whisper in the middle of a sentence. It's much more impactful than just using, commas.
Right. It definitely can add a little personality to your writing. Okay, now that end dash is shorter than the M dash, and we use this one for ranges, like dates or times.
So you'd use it like this. The conference is scheduled for June 10-12.
Exactly. It creates a nice visual connection between those 2 points. And finally, we have the hyphen. This little guy, this one's all about connecting words, especially in compound modifiers.
Oh, okay. So like well-written essay or high-speed chase.
You got it. The hyphen, it just helps those words work together, as a single unit.
Okay, so we've covered dashes. How about another tricky one? Subject-verb agreement. It seems simple, but I know it can get kind of complicated sometimes.
You're right. Subject-verb agreement, it's one of those like fundamental grammar rules, but it's really easy to overlook, especially when you have these longer, more complex sentences.
Yeah, so how can we make sure that we're getting it right?
Well, the key is to make sure that your verb agrees in number with the subject. So if the subject is singular, the verb has to be singular too. And if the subject's plural, the verb's got to be plural as well.
Can you give us a quick example, just so everyone's clear?
Of course. So like the cat sleeps on the couch versus the cat sleep on the couch. You see, it seems super simple, but it's easy to get tripped up, especially when you have a lot of other words and phrases kind of coming between the subject and the verb.
Right. And that's where careful proofreading is really, really important.
Absolutely. Proofreading, that's your chance to really double check that all those subjects and verbs are, playing nicely together.
This has been, wow, it's been a whirlwind tour of some common grammar challenges. We've covered so much everything from homophones to misplaced modifiers to those, the nuances of those dashes. So what are some of the key takeaways? What can our listeners start doing, like today, to really improve their writing?
Well, I think the most important thing is just awareness. Now that you're all more aware of these common pitfalls, you're more likely to spot them in your own writing.
Yeah, it's like having this mental checklist of things to watch out for. What about those helpful tools we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Don't be afraid to use those resources. Grammarly, spell checkers, dictionaries, they can be so valuable in your quest for grammatically sound writing. Think of them as like your personal grammar support team.
I love that. Your grammar support team. And I'll add one more thing. Practice. The more you write, the more those grammar rules will just, become second nature.
Couldn't agree more. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get.
Okay, before we wrap up completely, I want to go back to something you said earlier about choosing the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
It made me think about how grammar, in a way, is like a toolbox, right?
Yeah.
Filled with all sorts of different tools that we can use to create clear, effective, and even, beautiful communication.
I love that. That's such a great way to think about it. We have all these tools, verbs, nouns, punctuation, different sentence structures. And by learning how to use them effectively, well, we can build anything we want with language.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We can write stories, share ideas, persuade others, and, just have fun playing with words.
And the more tools we have in that toolbox and the more comfortable we are using them, well, the more powerful and expressive our writing becomes.
This is making me so excited about all the possibilities of language. But before I get carried away, we do need to start wrapping up this deep dive. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we do?
Yeah, I just say, it's been great diving deep into all of this grammar stuff with you. It's amazing how these seemingly little details can really make a big difference in how our writing comes across.
I know, right? It's been such a fascinating journey. And you know what I find interesting? Even though, we've been focusing on mistakes, this whole deep dive has really been about mastering the art of, clear, effective communication.
Exactly. The more we know about these common grammar pitfalls, well, the more confident we become in our writing.
For sure. And I don't know about you, but I'm curious. What are some of the grammar gremlins that you still find yourself, wrestling with?
Well, honestly, the English language, it never stops evolving, right? So there's always something new to discover. I still catch myself double-checking certain rules and, usage stuff, especially as new words and phrases pop up.
I hear that. It really is a lifelong learning process. But that's also what makes it so interesting, right? There's always something new to explore and master. And speaking of exploring, we want to hear from you. What are some grammar gremlins that you struggle with?
Yes. Head over to our Doctor Podcast YouTube channel and let us know in the comments. We're always looking for new ideas, new perspectives.
We love hearing from you and learning from each other. Plus, you never know, your comment, it might spark an idea for our next deep dive.
And hey, while you're there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes.
Yes. We've got so much great content coming up, more deep dives into grammar, writing tips, all sorts of fascinating language stuff.
We're passionate about helping you unlock the power of language and really communicate with confidence.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of grammar. We hope you learned something new, had a few, aha moments, and that you're feeling inspired to really take your writing to that next level.
And remember, grammar, it's not just about, rules. It's about the beauty of expression and the joy of really connecting with other people through the magic of words.
Beautifully said. Until next time, everyone, happy writing.